and thanks for tuning into this video, where I'm going to show you how you can very easily create your own arcade video games. You don't have to have any prior coding experience. If you can drag and drop, you can make a game. So first, let me introduce myself. My name is Jacqueline, and I work on a team at Microsoft that builds a product called Microsoft MakeCode. MakeCode is a website where you can code all sorts of cool things, including games. So that's me right there with part of our team in the office. I work as a program manager on the team, which means that I do a lot of user research to try and figure out what customers like and what they don't like, and I get to test different designs and features, and then also help out with planning the engineering work for our team. I really love my job. It's a lot of fun, and I get to work with super smart and funny people every day. Let's talk a little bit about the history of video games. Arcade games were the very first types of video games that were invented in the 1970s, and they were these big game machines where you had to insert a quarter into a slot to play a game. And the very first arcade game was Pong, which was created by Atari. And it was super simple, just some lines and dots moving around on a screen, simulating a ping pong game. When you think about the AAA games that exist today, with the amazing lifelike graphics and surround sound, it's kind of amazing how far we've come. Some of the most popular arcade games are ones like Pac-Man, Space Invaders, and Donkey Kong. And my personal favorite was Miss Pac-Man, which I used to play for hours when I was a kid. Okay, so what are we building today? We're going to create a space arcade game, kind of like Space Invaders, where we have a spaceship that's trying to avoid asteroids falling down from the screen, and it can shoot lasers to destroy the asteroids for points. So the first step is to open up your browser window to arcade.makecode.com. You can position this video on one side of your screen and your browser window on the other, so you can follow along with the video and as well as code. So when you go to that website, you should see a page that looks like this. This is the home page where you can create a project, you can see your recent projects, and you can also explore some tutorials and examples of different games. So the first thing I want you to do is go ahead and create a new project. So click on that orange New Project button and give your project a name, like Space Game or something. And then go ahead and click Create. Now you should see a screen like this. On the left side of the screen, you'll see a blue game console. This is called the Game Simulator, and it will show you what your game looks like as you're coding it. This is where you can play your game and test it out. You'll need to hover your mouse over the Game Simulator controls to make them active. Then you can use the joystick and the A and B buttons to play your game. You can also use the directional arrows and the space bar on your keyboard. This middle part here is called the toolbox, and it contains different menus or drawers that you can click on to open and select different code blocks to use in your game. And on the right side here is the workspace, and this is where you'll be building the code for your game. These code blocks, like this OnStart block here, snap together like puzzle pieces to form your program. There's a lot more stuff on here, but for now, these are the only 3 parts of the screen that you'll need to worry about. All right, let's get started. The first thing I want you to do is add some stars to our game background. So I want you to go to the Scene Toolbox drawer, drag a Start Screen Effect block into the OnStart block on your workspace. Then you can click on the confetti drop-down menu to select Star Field as the effect. Let me do that with you. I'm going to open up my Scene Toolbox drawer. I'm going to scroll down to the Effects category, grab this Start Screen Effects block, and drop it into the OnStart. Then instead of confetti, I want to select Star Field. Now, as soon as I do that, you'll notice in my simulator here, I get these nice stars kind of falling down on my game. All right, next step, let's create our spaceship. So to do that, go to your Sprites toolbox drawer, find a Set My Sprite block, which is the very first block in that drawer, and drag and drop it into your OnStart block. So what are sprites? Sprites are any object in your game that has behaviors and properties. So a sprite could be your main character in the game. It could be an enemy. It could be a door that you open. So anything where you can interact with it is a sprite. So let's look a little bit more closely at this Set Sprite block. So the first thing that you'll see here is the My Sprite name. That's the name of our character or the name of our variable. The next field is this gray box. This is the sprite image, and we'll get to that in a moment. And then the last field is the sprite kind. So in this case, our sprite is going to be our main player character. Now notice these two blocks, the Start Screen Effect block and the Set My Sprite block, are both in this OnStart block. Whatever code you put in the OnStart block will run immediately when your program starts. So let's go ahead and draw our spaceship image. So in this Set My Sprite block, click on the gray square to open the image editor and go ahead and draw an image for your spaceship. Or you can pick an existing image from the gallery. Let me do that with you. So I'm going to go to my Sprites toolbox drawer. I'm going to grab this Set My Sprite block and drop it into the OnStart. Then I'm going to click on this gray square here to open up the image editor. And here I can use these different colors to draw my image, or I can go to the gallery and I can take a look at all the different sprites that are available to me here. I'm going to go ahead and select one of these existing spaceship sprites. All right, and when you're done, go ahead and click the green Done button. Great job, everyone. Now we want to place our spaceship at the very bottom of our screen. So to do that, we're going to use a block called Set My Sprite Position. So if you open up the Sprites toolbox drawer, and you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a Set My Sprite Position block with an X and Y value. Go ahead and grab that and drop it into your OnStart block. Now, if you click in this X or Y value field where it says 0, you'll see a little pop-up open up. And this is where you can move your cursor to position your spaceship. And go ahead and place it down at the very bottom of your screen here. So let me do that with you. I'm going to open up my Sprites toolbox drawer. I'm going to find this position block, drag and drop it into my OnStart block, and then I'm going to click in the X value here to open up this little field editor, and I'm going to move my cursor to the very bottom, so right about there. And now you see that my spaceship is now positioned at the bottom of the screen here. So a little bit about coordinates. So the arcade game screen dimensions are 160 pixels wide by 120 pixels high, with the origin starting in the upper left-hand corner. So 0, 0 is up here. So when you say the X value is all the way over at 160, that's going to move it all the way to the right of the screen. And when you say the Y value is all the way down at 120, that's going to move it all the way to the bottom of the screen. All right, so we've got our sprite, we've got a cool star background, and we've positioned it. Now let's actually be able to control our sprite. So to do that, open up the controller toolbox drawer and grab that very first block, the Move My Sprite with Buttons block, and drag and drop it into the OnStart block. So let me show you how that's done. So I'm going to open up my controller toolbox drawer. I'm going to grab this very first block, and I'm going to drag and drop this into my OnStart, just like that. Now, if I click the plus button here, you'll notice that a couple other fields open up. Let's take a look at what those do. So the first value, the Vx value, sets the speed along the horizontal or x-axis of my game. And the Vy value sets the speed along the vertical or y-axis. Now for this game, we just want to be able to move our spaceship left and right across the screen. And so we're going to set the Vy value to be 0. So we can't move our spaceship up or down. So you'll notice that when we move our sprite left and right, we can move our sprite completely off the screen. We don't want to do that. So let's fix that. The next thing we want to do is open up our Sprites toolbox drawer. And if you scroll down to the Effects category, you'll see a block that says Set My Sprite Stay in Screen. That's the block we want to use to keep our sprite in the screen. So grab that block and drag and drop it into your OnStart block. All right, I'm going to open up my Sprites toolbox drawer, scroll down to the Effects category here, and I'm going to grab this Set My Sprite Stay in Screen block and drop it into the OnStart. Now in our game simulator, you'll see that when I move my sprite all the way to the left or all the way to the right, it can't go off the screen. Great job, everyone. Okay, now for the fun part. Let's make asteroids fall from the sky. So from the Game Toolbox drawer, drag an On-Game Update Every block, which is a second block, and drag and drop it onto the workspace. You can place it anywhere on your workspace. Click on the 500 millisecond drop-down menu and select 1 second or 1,000 milliseconds. So this block will run every 1 second. So whatever code we put in here will run every second in our game. Let me do that with you. So I'm going to open up my Game Toolbox drawer. I'm going to find this On-Game Update Every block and drag and drop it onto my workspace. And again, I can place it anywhere. Then I'm going to click on this drop-down to select 1 second. Okay, so every second, we're going to have an asteroid fall from the sky. So to do that, we're going to create what's called a projectile. A projectile is just a type of sprite that moves by itself. So open up your Sprites toolbox drawer, scroll down to the projectile category, and grab this second block, the Set Projectile from Side block, and drag and drop it into the On-Game Update Every. So I'm going to open up my Sprites toolbox drawer. I'm going to scroll down to the projectiles category and grab this second projectile block, and then drag and drop it into my On-Game Update block, just like that. All right, so we're going to actually rename this projectile to Asteroid. Right now it's just called Projectile. So click on that projectile drop-down menu and select Rename Variable. Then type in a name like Asteroid or whatever you want to fall from the sky. So I will do that with you. I'm going to click on this projectile drop-down menu here, and I'm going to select Rename Variable, and then I'm going to call this Asteroid. All right, just like that. Now we can create an image for our asteroid. So in that Set Projectile block, click on that gray square to open up the image editor and go ahead and draw your asteroid. Or again, you can pick an existing image from the gallery. So I'm going to click on this gray square, and again, you can draw your own asteroids here. I'm going to go ahead and find an asteroid in my gallery. So if I scroll down, I can see some rocks. How about this one? Looks kind of interesting. And then click the green Done button when you're done. Now, you may notice in your simulator that your asteroids are kind of falling at a diagonal. That's not good. So we need to set the velocity of our asteroids as well. So remember, we used these Vx, Vy values before. So go ahead and set the horizontal or the Vx value to 0. And that will make it so our asteroids are just falling up and down. So a quick note on velocity. When we say velocity, we're really talking about the speed and direction of our sprites. So a positive Vx velocity will move our sprite from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen, whereas a negative Vx value will move our sprite from the right side to the left. And the same for Vy and positive Vy and negative Vy. Negative Vy will move our sprite up, and positive Vy will move it down. All right, so let's go ahead and set this Vx value to be 0. And we'll leave the Vy as 50. And now you can see in our game that we do have asteroids coming from the top to the bottom of our screen every 1 second. But they're kind of on the left side of the screen. We don't want that, right? We want them to kind of fall in random locations across the screen. So how do we do that? So from the Sprites toolbox drawer, I want you to grab a Set MySprite X block and drag and drop it into the On-Game Update Every block. This will set the property of a sprite. And we actually want to set the property of our asteroid. So click on that MySprite drop-down menu and select your asteroid sprite instead of MySprite. So again, I will do this with you. I'm going to click on my Sprites toolbox drawer. I'm going to find this Set MySprite X to 0 block, and I'm going to drag and drop it in here. And instead of MySprite, I want to select my asteroid. All right, so what value should we set for X if we want the asteroid to be falling from random locations across the screen? Well, we have a really cool block called Pick Random, which just selects a random number given a minimum value and a maximum value. So open up your Math toolbox drawer, and if you scroll down a ways, you'll see this block. It's called Pick Random 0 to 10. Grab that block and drag and drop it right into the Set Asteroid X block, replacing the 0 that was there. So I will do this with you. I'm going to grab this open up this Math toolbox drawer, find this Pick Random block, and drag and drop it into this block, replacing the 0. Okay, and what value should we put in here? Well, we talked about the width of our arcade screen being 160 pixels wide. We also have a block that will just give us that value. So if you open up your Scene toolbox drawer, find that screen width block, and drag and drop it into the maximum value of the Pick Random block, replacing the 10. All right, so I will do this with you. Open up my Scene toolbox drawer, find this screen width block, and drag and drop it into our Pick Random block, replacing the 10 that was there. So now let's take a look at our game. Our asteroids are falling every 1 second from a random location across the width of our screen, and they're falling from the top to the bottom, which is exactly what we want. Great job, everyone. Okay, so now the last thing we need to do is make sure our asteroid is an enemy. And so to do that, open up your Sprites toolbox drawer and scroll down to the Overlap section. In that section, you'll see a block called Set MySprite to Kind. Grab that block and drag and drop it into the On-Game Update Every block. And then you're going to want to select the asteroid instead of MySprite, and you're going to want to select Enemy as the sprite kind. So I will do this with you as well. So I'm going to open up my Sprites toolbox drawer. I'm going to scroll down here to the Overlaps category, and I'm going to find this block, Set MySprite Kind to. Drag and drop it in here, and I'm going to select Asteroid, and I'm going to select Enemy. Okay, so now our asteroid is an enemy. Now the fun part. Let's make some lasers. So from the Controller toolbox drawer, find that On button A pressed block and drag and drop it onto the workspace. And again, you can place this block anywhere on your workspace. So I'm going to open up my controller toolbox drawer, find this on A button pressed block, and drag and drop it onto my workspace, just like this. Now from the Sprites toolbox drawer, drag a set projectile from my Sprite block. So it's going to be the first projectile block. We haven't used this one before. So grab that set projectile to projectile from my Sprite block and drag and drop it into the on button A pressed block. I will do that with you. Open up my Sprites toolbox drawer, scroll down to the projectiles category and grab this very first projectile block and drop it into the on A button pressed block. Okay, so let's draw our laser. So in the set projectile block, click on that gray square again to open up the image editor and go ahead and draw your laser or something that you're going to be shooting from your spaceship. So let's go ahead and do this. I am going to shoot green lasers. So I'm just going to make a little green laser here. And then click the done button when you're done. Okay, the next thing we need to do is, again, set the velocity or the speed and direction of your lasers. So in the Vx value, go ahead and type 0 and type -50 in the Vy value. Because remember, we want our lasers to go from the bottom of the screen to the top of the screen, right? So Vx will be 0 because our lasers are just going up and down, and Vy will be -50. Okay. So now try it out in your game simulator. Press button A, and you should see lasers shooting from your spaceship up towards the asteroids. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, now let's add a sound effect. So from the music toolbox drawer, go ahead and grab a play sound block and drag and drop it into the on A button pressed block. Click on the music drop down and select a sound that you want to play when you shoot your lasers. In my case, I think I'm going to select the pew pew sound. So again, open up your music toolbox drawer, grab this play sound block, drop it into the on button A pressed block. Click on this drop down to open up the different selection of music. And I'm going to select, again, this pew pew sound. So now, when I'm shooting my lasers, you can see that they make a really cool sound effect. All right. Now we need to figure out what happens when an asteroid crashes into our spaceship. So to do that, we're going to use a block called on sprite of kind player overlaps other sprite of kind player. You can find this block in the Sprites toolbox drawer in the overlaps category. Drag and drop this block onto your workspace. I'm going to click the Sprites toolbox drawer, scroll down to the overlaps section, and grab this on sprite overlaps block and place it on my workspace. And again, you can place this anywhere. Then we want to change the second sprite kind to enemy. So this block will listen for whenever our player sprite overlaps an enemy sprite or an asteroid. So click on this second player drop down and select enemy. Great job. So now we want to destroy it. So from the Sprites toolbox drawer in the Effects section, grab this Destroy My Sprite block and drag and drop it into the On Sprite Overlaps Other Sprite block. Then what you want to do is drag the other sprite variable from that overlaps block into the Destroy block, replacing My Sprite. I'll show you how that's done. So I'm going to open up my Sprites toolbox drawer, scroll down to the Effects category, and grab this Destroy My Sprite block and drop it in here. Then I'm going to grab this other sprite variable, which represents our asteroid, and drop it into this Destroy block, replacing My Sprite, just like that. Okay, so let's add effects. So in the Destroy block, click the plus icon to expand the block. And then click on the spray drop-down menu to select an effect you want to have happen when the asteroid crashes into your spaceship. So I'm going to click on this plus icon to expand the block, and then I'm going to select this spray drop-down menu and select, let's say, fire effect. Very quickly, you'll see in the game simulator that when an asteroid crashes into your spaceship, you do get this kind of fire effect, and the asteroid is destroyed. The next thing you can add, which is really fun, is a camera shake. So from the Scene Toolbox drawer, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, to the camera section, you'll see a block called Camera Shake. Grab that block and drag it into your overlaps block. And you'll notice in the game simulator when you do this, so I'm going to open up my Scene Toolbox drawer, scroll all the way down to the camera section, grab this Camera Shake block and drop it in here. Now in your game, when an asteroid crashes into your spaceship, whoa, you can see the whole thing shakes for a little bit, which is a really cool effect. Okay, the last thing we want to do is actually decrease our life. So every time we crash into an asteroid, we lose a life. So from the Info Toolbox drawer, drag a Change Life block into your On Sprite Overlaps block. So I'm going to open up my Info Toolbox drawer. I'm going to go to the Life category and grab this Change Life by -1. And you'll notice in our game now, in the upper left corner, whenever we die, you'll see we've got 2 hearts, 1 heart, and then no hearts, and our game is over. All right, now when our laser hits an asteroid, let's destroy the asteroid and gain a point. So again, go to the Sprites Toolbox drawer, scroll down to the Overlaps section, and drag another On Sprite Overlaps Other Sprite block onto the workspace. So I'm going to open up my Sprites Toolbox drawer, scroll down to the Overlaps section, and grab another one of these blocks to put on our workspace. And again, you can place this anywhere. All right. Now, what we want to do is change the 2-player drop-down kinds. So for the first player drop-down, select Enemy. This will represent our asteroid. And on the second player drop-down, select Projectile. And this will represent our lasers. So in this first drop-down, I'm going to select Enemy. And in the second, I will select Projectile. Okay, so now we're going to destroy both our asteroid and our laser. So from the Sprites Toolbox drawer, in the Effects section, drag a Destroy My Sprite block into the On Sprite Overlaps block, just like before. And just like before, I want you to grab that other sprite variable block and drag and drop it into the Destroy block. So I'm going to open up my Sprites Toolbox drawer, go to the Effects category, grab this Destroy My Sprite block and drop it in here. And then I'm going to drag this other sprite and drop it into the Destroy Sprite block. Now, I want you to do the same thing again. Grab another Destroy My Sprite block and place it in the Overlaps block. And this time, grab the first variable, the sprite variable, and drag and drop it into that second Destroy block. So I'm going to do that again. Open up my Sprites Toolbox drawer in the Effects category, grab this Destroy My Sprite block, and this time I'm going to grab this first variable and drop it in here. This one represents the asteroid. So I'm going to destroy my laser, and I'm going to destroy my asteroid. All right, and then we can also add an effect, because effects are just awesome. So in that second Destroy block, go ahead and click the plus icon to expand the block. Click on the Spray drop-down menu and select an effect to play. So in this case, I think I will, I'll expand this, and then I'll click on this Spray drop-down, and I'll select a Disintegrate effect to have happen. Now you can try it out in your game simulator. when you shoot an asteroid, you can see that it gets destroyed with kind of a disintegrating effect whenever I hit it with my laser. All right, great. Last thing we want to do is just add 1 to our score. So from the Info Toolbox drawer, find a Change Score block and drag and drop that into your Overlaps block. So I'm going to go to my Info Toolbox drawer, grab this Change Score by 1 block, and drop it right in here. And now you can see when I shoot the asteroids, I get points for shooting them. So very cool. All right. Great job, everyone. That's it. So your complete code should look something like this, where we have some initialization code in the onStart block. We set up our spaceship and our star field effects. Then every 1 second, we have an asteroid falling from the sky, and we have our lasers when we press the A button shooting from our spaceship. And then we've coded our overlaps behavior if an asteroid hits our spaceship or if our lasers shoot an asteroid. Great job, everyone. So the last thing you can do is if you want to share your game, you can click the Share button in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. You can name your game, take a screenshot, or record a GIF of your game. And then you can also click to publish. And that will give you a URL that you can use to copy and paste and share with your friends and family and show them how you could code your very own arcade game. All right, well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have today, but I encourage you to keep on working on your games. Here are some ideas that you can do to mod your game. You can add more sounds and effects, like add an explosion sound when your laser hits an asteroid. You can also add different types of asteroids that are falling down and change how often they appear. For example, maybe every 5 seconds, a really big meteor falls down that's worth more points or requires more lasers hits for it to be destroyed. You can also change the speed of your spaceship, the asteroids, or your lasers by tweaking those Vx and Vy values. You could also design a custom background to your game by using the Set Background Image block, or add a starting splash screen message to your game by using the Splash block. You can also think about adding some power-up objects, like fuel that your spaceship needs to collect as well, or add animations. Lots of different ways that you can continue modding your games. There are handheld game devices that you can purchase to download your arcade games to and play your games on the go. If you go to arcade.makecode.com/hardware, you'll see the list of compatible devices. Here's an example of a couple of these devices. You simply plug these into your computer, click the download button, and then you can play the games that you code on the road. We also do a live stream every Monday through Friday on Twitch, where we build arcade games. So feel free to drop in and watch anytime. And you can go to the MakeCode forum if you have any questions while coding your game, or if you run into issues and need help. Thank you so much for watching, and happy gaming and coding!